a verbal model, when we're specifically talking about algebra, we're talking about how to take something that is written in English and convert it into a math phrase or an equation or an expression, something that we can take and utilize in our classroom. So that's really what we're doing. We're talking about translating, is taking it from English, putting it into math phrases. So we're going to look at a few of these here, and we're going to look at that first one. It says 3 decreased by a number. So in many of these cases, it may or may not be a direct translation. You might have to think a little bit. So 3 decreased by a number, though, is a direct translation. So I'm going to have 3, and then I'm going to have 3 decreased by a number. So we're going to take away something from it, but we don't know what that number is. And whenever we have like a number, we're usually going to give it a variable, and it really can be anything you want. The one that we use a lot of times is x, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to use the letter b. So it'll be 3 minus b. All right. Now we have this, says 3 decreased by a number, so it's starting the same. So I'm going to have 3 decreased by a number, but it's not just a number this time, it's a number squared. So I have this unknown number that will be squared in terms of just translating that by. Now this next one down looks similar, but just like in English, our punctuation has great importance when we're dealing with and writing things mathematically, as well as translating them from English into mathematics. So we start by the same thing, but it says I have 3 decreased by a number, and then I have this comma. What does that comma mean? Well, the comma means it's going to apply back to everything that was just before that. 3 decreased by a number squared, as opposed to 3 decreased by a number squared. So 3 decreased by a number squared is going to be like this, where we're taking that whole thing of 3 decreased by a number and we're squaring that whole thing. The next one here, again, these all start to look similar, so I'm just trying to get you to think about some of the nuances. 3 less than a number. So instead of 3 being decreased by a number, I now have 3 less than a number. But not just a number, it's a number squared. All right, so that means I have a number squared, which we've been using so far, so that'll be b squared. And this is 3 less than that. So how do I make b squared less? I'm going to take away 3. And now I have the last one, and maybe you're seeing a pattern here. 3 less than a number, so b minus 3 is 3 less than a number. Or a number decreased by 3 is the same as 3 less than a number. And then the whole thing gets squared. Paying attention to our punctuation, really thinking about what it means if something is decreased or less than. The order there is very important. If it were adding, the order is not as important. 3 more than a number would just be 3 plus b or b plus 3. They are the same value. But if we were to look up at this first thing up here, if we would have had b minus 3, those two numbers are very different numbers. So how you do it, especially when we're talking about subtraction, matters. Quotient of 14 and a number is 2. So now what I have here is, in the previous slide I had a bunch of expressions. This is actually now an equation. These are equations. The reason why I know there's an equation is it is a complete sentence. An expression is a phrase, an equation is a sentence. Subject, object, and verb. So I have quotient. Quotient, I remember, is division. Quotient of what? Quotient of 14 and a number is 2. All right, that equal sign, this, when translated just all by itself, equal means is. Let's look at the next one. The sum of twice, so sum, starting right there at the beginning, and let's just read this, the sum. So I'm going to add some notes here. Sum means add. Twice means it's going to be 2 times something. A number means I have something that I don't know what it is. Let's use, we're going to throw something really crazy at you. I'm going to use a Greek letter here. I'm going to use theta. It can be anything. It can be a box. All right. So the sum of twice a number and 6, well, 6 is the number 6, is at least. All right, is at least. That means more than. All right, does it include that number or not? So is it greater than 16, or is it just, is it at least 16? So that means it could be 16. So that means it's greater than or equal to. So now I got to put all this together into some type of a math equation here. All right, so the sum of, I have twice the number, so I have 2 theta, sum, which means add, and 6. What you'll see is sometimes our translation isn't going to be exactly directly underneath the words, so I have to piece them together. Now, if any of you have ever studied a foreign language, you know it's similar there. How we structure sentences in English is not always the same as the way they get structured in other languages, so you have to think through the ideas going on and where the action happens. So the action is sum, and this is at least 16. All right. Now we'll go to one last example here. One more than a number. So I have one more than a number. So I have my unknown number. We'll say a D. One more than that, plus 1. Then I got that comma in there, which tells me that that's all together. And all of that gets tripled. So times 3. All right. Is no more than. All right, if it's no more than something, another way to say that is it is less than something. So that's less than. The quotient, got a fraction. The quotient of the square of that number, d squared. Oh, and I'm missing the last part. And it's supposed to be n7. So then this would be n7. So let me just write that in over there. That's going to be that number and 7. All right. So that'd be taking and translating that one. That's a quick little intro into verbal models. So taking a verbal model and making a mathematical equation. You could do the same thing if you had a math equation or a math phrase and translating it back and providing it as a verbal model. Thank you very much.